Hmm. Yeah, that's the notes. Sweet. Hello. I guess we're down to just you. Yeah. Well, I did things a little bit different for this class this time because it's my first time teaching it here. And I've done theory before at the undergraduate level, other institutions. I've done it here. And this one, I want to do a little bit different than testing culture a little bit. What I want to see is you probably already picked up that I look at things a little bit different in this class stuff.
Yeah.
I don't value grades. I value work. And what I want to see is I want to see people start to do the same, because when they do, all of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what? All the concerns you've ever had about your career from here on out will never be a problem again. And that's because all of a sudden the thing that's driving me isn't the fact that there's, I have to get through this work. It's the fact that you see the value of doing the work.
Well, we're talking work as far as papers.
Whether it's papers, whether it's papers or, yeah, it's definitely papers. For this one, it's idea development. So this is all point of ideas. The purpose of that first assignment is to start identifying those. So I wanted to have a little bit more time to get those before coming in today. I didn't get that last night though. So we'll be doing that on Monday. We'll sit down. Okay. Here are the ideas that you have. And in the meantime, I'll probably send you a few things related to theory that will help you for whatever topic you're into. And we'll start working from there. So you'll see the practical application side of it, which is really, really nice. So sound is working now. I need to send neighbors an email because he tried to pop in a minute ago and then it ended. Let me see if I can do that real quick.
I guess I'm still trying to wrap my head around the topic and the theory part.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that because I saw you were the one who sent me the email, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I tried to put it in there and somehow it didn't take it. It showed up blank, so I just sent it to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Blackboard's like that. It's finicky at best. The let's see here. I need to send. I'm just gonna click over here.
Like the topic's not a problem. It's just you gotta kind of look at all those different theories and try to see.
Post neighbors. So I want to make it bigger. Bigger, not that. Bigger. There we go. All right, so this would be, neighbors.
So you have to decide.
Well, you have to. He tried to pop in a minute ago, and it wasn't letting him in. So I need to let him know restart it. The meeting as it.
That test.
You should be able to join now. I love Zoom, but sometimes technology is exactly what technology is. Let's see here. I need to pull in here. Doggone, I didn't bring that with me. I tell you what I'll do. I'll just go over here.
I just wish there was some way to do a study on people and see what smarter people for technology. There's more
resilience. Resilience is the word.
There's more, there's more stuff out there, but how much do people really remember it? How much did they know?
Yeah.
Because I thought in college back in the day, when you didn't have computers, everything was you go to class, you take a test. It's like, you got to remember the stuff. Here, I hate to say it, but it's like.
Yeah, it's more about where information is and how quickly I can gather it and give it to you.
Yeah. Do people retain all that, or that why they're smart?
To varying degrees. And that's where the value of papers comes in, because what the paper should do, as we're doing, I'll start sending you guys some more literature on this stuff, is basically sort of like this any of these chapters you've been dealing with. Now we should be into trait theories. That's chapter 5.
5, yeah.
Those are gonna be your biological and psychological stuff largely, but it's gonna overlap with sociology. Or crime and behavior. Trait theories, whether you're talking about these or any of the other sections in there, you have to realize that they're talking about an entire group of theories, not one specific theory, but more like a vein or an approach, I guess would be another way of looking at it. And so you'll have theories that deal with each of those domains as outlined in your textbook. But when you deal with this theory specifically, you'll get more detail, and once you start doing that is where it really starts to wrap up. All come together. More people. Excellent. He's coming back in. He was trying to get in earlier. And so about that, so let's see that side of thing. I think we have methods. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Those online, can't see him right here. Here we go. Cool. All right. So trait theories. Let's move that a little bit. That's kind of, I don't know. Yeah, that might help a little bit. So let's have a quick conversation about methods, because I talked about at the beginning of the semester, in this field, the two biggest classes for everything, theory and methods, right? So theory is all about ideas. And so these ideas, some of the ones in this area, some of the older ones, some of the most dangerous. And I'm going to show you that one because it's going to get really, I wouldn't say heated. It's not heated in terms of you won't pick up those ideas of people like, oh my gosh, people actually ran with that and took those ideas and did something. And we got a whole lot of bad stuff as a result. Some of it has some actual scientific value, some of it less so, and sorting out the differences is vital, because if you're not doing the scientific way, it's probably not going to turn out right. Scientific way is methods. So this is the ideas, and integrating those ideas. Methods is the process that will outline specifically, how we did what we did, what was been done before, what we found, and what it means for the areas we're studying or more broadly. That's where you'll get to you ask that question about, well, now that information is everywhere, what do people actually hold? What's of value? Until you actually do it and you run through it, that's the point that it's yours. That's the point you actually know something. And that's something that's really important. I'm going to show you some cool stuff, and I don't know how far I'll get into this. I don't know if I'll get into the psychological stuff, because whenever I started looking at this this morning, I only got to the biological stuff, and like there's probably just too much to talk about here.
So is that like a combination of biologic and social?
Okay.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's a wide variety of things. So people who do this typically they'll refer to themselves as you'll see bio, soc, you'll see bio, psycho-soc.
That's all in trait theory. That's all under that heading.
They won't say psycho.
It's all under that heading of trait theory.
Yeah, and so it's going to deal with the biological, the sociological, psychological, and you might have some people just focus on any one of those, whether it's psychological, biological, sociological. All of them overlap. It's
because I see it as a combination of all three myself.
Oh yeah.
People's, psyche is experience, and then sociological is experience, and biology is your genetic makeup.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination.
So underlying all of this, the idea, the big one, right? Like this is like I identify, it's like, okay, trait theories, something about people's traits has something to do with eventually the behavior side, and when we're dealing with us, that's just crime, right?
Okay.
At some point, all those things.
Yeah, so I see.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, at some point stuff leads to crime. The big idea is for this one, the debate. nature versus nurture. Which one is it? Nature versus nurture? Actually, let's do a poll. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people here. So that means we will have a tiebreaker. One of those is gonna win. Okay? How many of you say nature? Put it in the chat box or sound off. And how many of you want nurture? So if you're in the check box, if you're in the online, go ahead and put it into the chat box or sound off. You guys, nature or nurture?
I hate to say it, but I think it's both. Then
You gotta pick one, even if it's like a 51.
What's the nature?
Nature would be everything related to whether it's biology, that kind of stuff.
Like genetics and all that.
Yeah, so everything would be
Nurture
biologically,
is your
psychological.
environment and your psych.
Everything for you as you started at day 1.
I'd say it's nurture.
So I got one over here.
Nurture,
You can't hear any audio.
Say nature.
nurture.
I was wondering about that because I had some issues with
I
that
think it's
earlier.
kind of a little bit of both, but I'd say probably more nurture.
Test, test, test. It shows the audio coming through on the microphone here.
Oh, you got a nurture.
Oh, I got someone who's listening. Okay. I'm gonna text him real quick through the chat thing here. So I got someone who can't hear me.
I think.
Yeah, so we got another nurture. Okay. Another nurture. Are you a nurture?
Yeah.
That's 3 nurtures. We have one who can't hear, so there goes our tie. But it looks like we're already kicking over towards nurture, right? So there's only one person tie. Nature or nurture, if you can hear me. Let me see. I won't send that to everyone. I'm just gonna send it to Jeffrey. All I'm saying is, darn it, it looks like it may be on your end. Audio seems working here, but Zoom is having issues. That's been kind of a running thing for this semester. That's technology. Good. Okay, so we've got 1 floater on there. 2 technical. Okay. That's
But
interesting.
is there really a real answer to that? Though it's all theory, and then if research say one or the other.
How do you untether those things? Right, that's part of what we have to do in this. And that's one of the reasons why it's like, I come in here and I'm talking like 3 levels of abstraction. It's like, I'm not dealing with anything directly, and it seems like it's pain, and yeah, it kind of is. Separating these things out is so damn difficult. I need to say just one word, and you guys, if you've ever seen it before, epigenetics. You guys ever heard of that? Epigenetics? Yeah, basically the environment and your choices can quite literally change what proteins are being produced by your DNA, right? So you have a set of DNA that tells you to produce certain proteins, certain hormones. That's going to be influenced not just by this right here, but also your individual choices. The limits to that, it's like, who really knows? One of the more interesting thoughts I ever had on that was it Albert Einstein's brains that they cut into, dissected after his death. They found the area for his brain that works related to, well, basically physics. Hey, this is way oversized and is not normal at all. Okay, is that this or is that this? Right? Because every time you learn something, your brain structure literally changes to some degree. And yeah, so it's like you can't separate them out. And so as we do that from maybe a statistical standpoint, or that'd be on the methodological side over here, in terms of thought, it's really, really, really hard. And so you can see the different ways that people struggled with that over time.
So is he just a freak? Is that what you're saying? He could have been.
He could have just been a freak.
That's
Or
what,
could have
that's
just been
how
having,
you,
yeah.
how you know, unless you would have.
There is no way to really know for someone. You do this, that's sort of like the method stuff where, yeah, so it was just, dang. That's a methods thing where the only way you really know is time and experimentation. Okay, that kind of experimentation, you can see how dangerous this one is. Really, really fast. Yeah, that's so first thing I wrote, there were trait theory, curious implications there. It's like, yeah, we start applying this one. is a lot of history there. Hmm. Okay, I need to talk about that.
So what you're saying is what your genetics, like how you deal with stress depends on what hormone your body puts out to your brain. Like, let's say you're under some fight or flight, okay? It's like the stress of either fighting or flighting. Some people says fight and some people says flight. Is that because that's a genetic thing that's telling you to do that? Or is it I don't know. That's what I would think. I think it's something that's wired into your system.
It's really hard to
It's
tell.
gotta give you a hormone to tell you
Yeah.
which way to go.
Yes, it's really hard to tell. Because what you're dealing with there is, well. You deal with like stress and environmental exposure, right? Stress is one that as you experience it, yeah, you'll have quite clear biological signs, right? You do that over a long enough time, it's like, well, what does that do? Not good. Environmental exposure, right? Can do the same thing stress does. The book, I think it'll talk about things like, we gets into it. Exposure to these types of chemicals here will do this, exposure to these types of things here can cause this. And it's, okay, it makes some sense when you get into it, but from the output, this is what we're delving into. This is the nature of that one. And that's how much at the base it is. When you start doing that, the directions you can take them can be extremely good. They can also be very, very, very bad. In terms of this argument, there are many different ways to resolve it, right? And so, we can talk about that a little bit. Okay, nature and nurture. Positive. Positive. Negative. Negative. Okay. Better. Good. Bad. When I say positive and negative, I mean good or bad, right? Good thing exposed, good element of nature in you, good element of nurture given, right? The nature of this one is that mm, 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 right? And then also this one right here also equals crime. So you've got here, where you can have anything negative, and if anything negative pops up in here, different people will be triggered to different degrees. Because we're people, we all do things a little bit different. So,
So the only way that's not a plus and a plus is not crime, is basically nature and nurture together.
yeah,
If you combine
any
negative
weaknesses,
with any of the good or the bad, you get crime.
any weaknesses in this whatsoever, guess what, your punishment is for trying and not being successful, more crime. Right? What do I want to say here?
So that's like a 3/4.
Yeah,
That's pretty.
we are
high,
set.
75%.
We are set. From this standpoint, you just look at options. If we were doing this like people do in biology, what do you get? You get the worst of the worst, kind of mediocre but bad, and maybe one scenario where it's good, where everything goes right. That is not life at all. It never will be, right? Yet if we stop and look at today's world, what do we see? We have some crime. We don't quite have positives across both of those for everybody, but we still don't see that much crime. It's still a rarity, even though it's as common as it is. Good sign for society, good sign for people. We can come together and we can do some stuff. One of your metrics right there. People often get sad about where we're at in today's world. It's like metrics are a big thing. Yeah. So metrics are big things when you talk about past stuff. Yeah, this will probably take most of the rest of the class. This debate. The forms that it comes in, ones you should have already experienced already, would be individual, right? Those are gonna be individual level things that you've been exposed to think about this one already, so I can already start to tie in some of the information that you already know, right? At some point in your classes, there's probably been some type of debate related to this. Yes? Maybe?
Well,
Okay, there is.
if you're talking all classes or.
Yeah, well, just at some point in time, or maybe in common conversation.
Yeah.
Right, and there's all kinds of bad ways in this field where we can have that conversation. My favorite one is in criminology when you're dealing with sex crimes. Because you have that and the whole unintended after effects. It's like, okay, now there's a third life in the mix of this criminal action, what do you do? It's like, okay. That's this one right there. You can delve into that. Right? Or whether it's something individual level for most people, because that's how people debate. When we start to aggregate up, you can see a little bit more about how it works en masse. That's the point of theory. We talked about that already, kind of thing. And so as we do that, that's where we can start to break out. Okay, so these are the common elements that we see, common frameworks and ways that this has been tested before. Yeah. So nature of growth and judging the past. Yeah, this one is one where significantly we talk about the past. So we'll do bio and psych first. And then we'll do this one. Okay. So one implication, but this has been pretty well. Okay. If we're dealing with factors that have to do with nature and nurture, this would be one that would be highly unethical to experiment with, but let's assume that that is off the table, ethics. If we're going to really play with this one from an experimental standpoint, how awesomely awful is that? Okay. Ooh, maybe I didn't preface that. Okay, I want you to stop and think about that in a negative direction. What is the worst kind of way in which you can use theories like this to take actions that relate to large masses of people, governments, and things of that nature? History lesson. Eugenics. You heard that one before, yes. Okay, so now you guys have an idea for where that takes its route, its roots. Eugenics is rooted in this, right? We can sort out the good and the bad people biologically. I can do that by looking at you. Now we're hitting it, right? Now you're starting to see some problems with this one. This one has major implications. We start looking at that historically. Have there been times where people have done that? Yes. Yeah, so this one's really dangerous. Also as a note for that, if you go back and look at the way it was used, judging the past is something that people do a lot. They do it incorrectly. They look at things as they are now and they see where they want to be. We're not there yet, kind of thing. It's like, we still have all these problems in the world. Are there places where this is still actively being done in this world right now? Of course there is, right? That'd be like me saying, do you think that there's not being experimentation being done on that alone, right? The genetic side of things. It's like, oh my goodness. Here, we're going to pick and choose people based off of their characteristics. what characteristics. We're gonna start talking about crime. Genetics, and all the things that are wrong with people. Ooh, we've got a lot. We've got a lot of things wrong.
I don't get how you can do that though, with eugenics, because doesn't eugenics like defects of, trying to get rid of these.
So that's the basis
But
of
that's
what
like a
got started out.
physical thing.
It is,
right?
the biological side. So that's where I'm getting. So this picks up with a guy by the name of Lombroso.
Yeah. I don't know how you can tell if somebody's gonna be not.
That's how they have this, that's what they did. And so you gotta realize that these are people who, scientific method is still really being in the process of just being developed during this time frame. So they don't have that. So you can see a little bit about how people used to think, kind of get your idea about, how people hold information. Back then, they just held more because they didn't have as many places for it. The computer can think pretty easy for you, but they won't play with ideas the same way that we do now. That'll be a little bit about methods. Give you an idea for that whenever you get into that. Methods. If I'm trying to figure out how things work, I'm not just gonna ask myself how something works. I'm gonna ask a whole bunch of people and I'm gonna pilot to see, okay, on average, it looks like this thing's actually working or it isn't, right? Or that kind of thing.
See the one that was talking about your character, like your physical characteristics.
Yes. So there's a whole bunch.
If you can pick up something with your.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff like that in this time frame where it is they're trying to make those connections between crime and cause, but they don't have that process to really sit down and hammer it out like what we do now. And with your papers, we're working on that. Those ideas were the first step. I'll pick up with that on Monday. This guy, ecto, meso, and endo, I want to say what we started with. I'd have to dig back in them. I don't remember. I've got it on my computer.
Did we ever do a paper on that? I mean, did they ever have research that we actually?
I'll show you some stuff here in a second,
Okay.
right? And so basically what they did is, I'm just gonna take a whole bunch of pictures of criminals or themselves, look at their characteristics and try to typify them, right? Depending on people's build, you can start to get some idea for what their life is like, right? This person's worn down, really, really thin, that kind of thing's like, okay, that person, like, what kind of that struggle or something like that. It's like, okay, that may be difficulties with the system, whatever, right? This person's big and muscular, okay. This person is just the average person. Okay, average person's not necessarily going to decline. The small person, I think, can't remember, Jordan. Probably not gonna be criminal. The big muscular guy. He might be. He's more physically intimidating. He's more physically capable. That's one thing. Okay. Well, as we start looking at that, as we start looking at the physical characteristics, people who are a little bit more muscular, brow line's a little thicker. Okay. You got that one. Start building from there. Okay. I'm seeing different jaw lines, different facial structures as I start building these things together. Okay. As I start doing that, as I start cross-referencing this in various topics that are in the book, one of those will be what's not called IQ, right? Okay, now I'm also keying into factors that deal with mental retardation, whatever, right? You start using this, right? It's not much different from phrenology. Phrenology is also in this time frame. That's the bumps on the head that you'll see where, okay, if I feel a lump in this one area of this guy's head, that's gonna deal with this facet of their personality or this character. It's like, yeah, it's all bull crap. It is. You're trying to make something out of nothing. That's amazing that somebody was actually able to do, right? So the science there is not nearly as good as what it is today. But today we're starting to get to see, okay, as much information as we have, can I quantify these things? Do I have enough information across enough people to start doing that over time and to see what's actually happening there? And now we're actually starting to form where we can actually look, right? So that's why this one is advantage, because if we want to run something like that, we'll never have been more effective or efficient than ever before in human history, which means that is the ultimate recipe for destruction, disaster, however you want to look at it. Huge, huge issues. But at the same time,
But you get out in some.
Yeah.
You know how you can go out and get a genetic test.
Yeah.
Your DNA. Does that, it tells you like if you can get cancer and stuff, but does it tell you what your psychological or traits are or not?
to some degree, some can do.
I wonder about that.
Yeah, some degree, some do. See, I've done 20, I think it's 23.
Getting pretty advanced.
Yeah, and so what they'll do is they'll do, okay, on the nature side. Okay, your chances for cystic fibrosis are increased, decreased, depending on your genetic makeup is. Your chances for these diseases, such and such. Seems to me like you have, you have a predisposition for elevated stress levels. They'll identify stuff like that, or predispositions for,
Metal.
yeah, or sleeping patterns. Seems like, yeah, according to what we've seen here in your DNA structure, what we've seen in other people, looks to me like the number of hours of sleep you require be somewhere between 6 and 8.
Wow.
You know, it's like, okay, and maybe you'll get some survey about it where they're trying to gather more information. It's gathering, which they can. So if you get someone who wants to do something like this, guess what? It's done. Right? That's how dangerous that is. Okay. The nature of growth. Going back and looking back and seeing bad ideas is not an indication for how bad we are. Let's stop and look to see if those things are still taking place today. If they are, yeah, that's something to fix. If they aren't, signs of improvement. Don't look at it as here's how far we have to go. Look at it more as in, hey, we're already showing that we can make changes, and we can already show that we made them on huge scales with dealing with handfuls of people. Like, that could be you. You just have to put the effort into it, and we'll see how things go, because that's how these things develop. What I'll show you here.
Speaking of trait theories.
Yeah.
This is get way off in the weeds, but.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, looking at that, if they can figure out, okay, somebody commits a crime and they can look at their eugenics, they might be able to figure out a way to correct them in the corrections process. Where they're not.
Yeah, so
I mean, that's way.
yeah.
Future.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, once we start integrating that information, how quickly can we start to address those things?
Yeah.
Who knows? Let's say they do find something, let's say it's yeah, on the genetic side where it's like, okay, this is your predisposition for take whatever mental issue you would lead to whatever type of crime you're dealing with. Okay, we can see that, we can give you a pill that will regulate that. Like, okay. Does that work? We gotta get to the point where we can actually see it and test it on mass. Yeah, I mean, medicine side.
I can see where that.
Oh, yeah.
A good thing.
Oh, yeah, it's like,
Yeah. Keep people from being recidivists.
oh, yeah, the value here is, yeah, you see the danger there, and yet we're still continuing. I mean, there's definitely value here. Definitely.
But the morality of it, you have to be very careful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then thing I wanted to show you before we start jumping into those theories. I don't have anything from Lombroso himself because he was Italian. I want to say he was Italian. I can't remember. The word Italian sticks out in my mind. I've seen it. Yeah, it's something.
You know,
That was right here. So this is Gina Lombroso Ferrero. I mispronounced Ferrero. Yeah, definitely. I'm 90% Italian is where it came from. They being as in this is his daughter. A generation later, right? You want to read this? You can read this at any point in time. I'll kind of zoom in a little bit. You guys can see that, and I'll show you guys on screen because I know you can see it through the camera, but it's not the same unless you actually see it. Yeah, so that's one of her printouts, one of her publications, kind of thing.
Love that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you want to. Yeah. Do that.
Yeah.
So-
You can upload it on to this week's stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not, don't have enough stuff to do.
Okay, so if you read this, you'll read this. This doesn't sound like anything that you're reading in terms of the way that it's written. There might be something kind of big in there in terms of the words on paper, the messages that are being conveyed, and the spirit of those messages. It's probably one of those things to talk about. But what I want you to see is this right here. So as she's talking about all of the things that are going on, and they'll reference other theories like Beccaria, how these things work, they start making their case. And as she starts talking about it, you can see here the types of things that they're dealing with. All right, physical anomalies of the born criminal, skull formation. Okay, you had something that traumatized you physically that's going to directly affect your capacities moving forward, right? The face, narrow head, low vault of skull, face of a criminal, its disproportionate size, greater development of senses compared with that of nervous centers. And they went through and they actually measured these things. And they're finding stuff, even back then. Right?
What year did you say thing that was?
This one, what year did I have on there? I didn't have a year on there. This one would have been 1911. Good year though, especially like firearms. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, these are old ideas. And yet these will be the people that the ones who are actively researching, they'll go back and they'll bring this guy up, right? They might bring up her too, right? As they start discussing these things from that historical point, you start here and you see what's going on in the world, and then between where this is and where we're at now is all the growth that's happening.
Thinking of something funny, you know how they say that people have some Neanderthal gene in them still.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those traits are like Neanderthal traits.
Yes, they are, and
That's
so
the strange thing that I was thinking, that's why I kind of laughed at it. That sounds like a Neanderthal.
okay, so we'll talk about that one for a second because that one has very, very important implications still. One thing that's cool with this, one that's his daughter. I thought that was pretty cool. So it's like, okay, you got some family line thing going on here too. Also, you're talking 1911, a woman who's publishing and stuff like this. It's like that's really cool. The idea though is, yeah, the methodology isn't quite where it should be yet. The abilities that we have today were not what they had then, and they're doing the best they can to generate knowledge. Don't move away from the utility of it. Also know the danger of it. We'll talk about stop that for a second. We'll talk about that. So, as you start looking at these things, you start dealing with whether it's
What was the thinking of? As far as the lower IQ, the more criminal. I don't know, I kind of think it's the other
you
way
get
around.
both. You get
Yeah.
both. So basically, this is one of those areas where things get really, really difficult to talk about depending on PR stuff. It's like that should have no bearing on any of this stuff. So that's one of those things to bear in mind. First one I'm going to talk about is one that is a historical one that will kind of identify that for you. If I said, Mongoloid. You ever heard that word before?
Yeah.
It's kind of fallen out of favor in the last few years.
Good birth.
Probably the way I used to hear it a lot whenever I was younger was to say that someone was involved, maybe, right? Someone's unintelligent, unevolved.
So it's more of a cultural thing, not a physical thing.
I'm actually tying a few things together. This is one for a long period of time. This was an insult.
Yeah.
The reason it was an insult is, I don't know, this one was the Caucasus, was it S or was it Z? I can't remember. It might have been S.
I see where you're going with that, 'cause that's more like an Asian thing.
Yes.
They didn't get it. Okay.
Yes. So originally anthropologists, well, they're trying to figure this out. They classify people these three ways,
Yeah.
right? You have the people from Africa, the people from Europe, and the people from Asia, right? Asia. This term eventually cues over to here, Down syndrome, right? We characterize Asians by narrower eyes and other characteristics. We see something similar to that eye shape in people with Down syndrome. So we're going to use that term to refer to them. Now it's an insult to your intelligence. I'm saying you're unevolved, and I'm trying to use a fancy term to say not only that, but I'm better than you. That's the one where I'd always hear that one. You know, that kind of thing is you're really denigrating somebody.
Actually, I think it's the opposite.
And that's the funny
You
thing.
think about it, because they, you know, I hate to get into this stuff, but Asians are the ones that seem to
Yes,
acquire.
and that's one of the beauty things of it, when you start getting to the social side of this, and you'll see that, you know, even when we dig into some of the older stuff, things change. This one right here, what that does is, to some degree, it keys into this, to some degree, it keys into anthropology. And then if you want to dig into the social side and stereotypes, it's like, okay, when these groups of people came over to this country in the 1800s, they are seen as a blight on all society, a bunch of opium users that maybe we can put them to work, I guess, building the railroads and things like that. We're going to treat them like crap. But now today, when we look at that same group, we see math, we see science, we see, okay, that's just that group has a higher rate of involvement in those areas. Yes? Hilarious, because stereotypes back in the day, uninvolved and unintelligent. Now they're so intelligent, they don't know how to drive. It's like, how weird. A generation ago, they have been, to some degree, a group that people would have had fear towards. They would have classified them this way. If they had really gotten into it, they probably would have tried to classify them this way. And then what is it they actually do? Right. So that's also another one of those elements of danger associated with this. Okay. Not talking about that. On the other side, that's kind of on the social side of all this patients. The biological side, of course, you have everything related to eugenics and all the things that people have done related to that. Whether you're talking in Germany, whether you're talking in China, whether you're talking here and anywhere else. You also have this keyword I had here. I know what it was now. Medical side. Same kind of principle that's behind this idea right here. Bottom. We can fix you very, very quickly. You will not create more problem, except for the drooling problem.
They even do that in.
No, actually, I watched a really cool documentary about enjoy psych class in high school about lobotomies. Most of them actually didn't end up having to do it.
Cool.
The majority of them did not.
No, they had major personality changes and we really screwed them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you took that person away from them. Not so much the drooling thing, is that they're an empty shell of a person, and we did that. Yeah. Does that make it better or worse? I'd rather have the drooling thing, because if they're running around like a normal person, and know that I did that to them and took that from them, I feel a whole lot worse than if they're not aware of it. I don't know, that's one of those things, it's like that. That's what you get good stuff. In the old stuff, the newer stuff goes much, much better. All right. I think, let's see, what else is this now? Evolution, it's later. Let me start talking about where it is now. Okay, so now we have a good idea for just how dangerous this is. Yeah. That's how we handled it with the resources available in yesteryear, right? Resources and tools we have now are much more sophisticated, much more accurate, and
You talk about lobotomizing people.
Well, I'm just talking about the opportunities that we have now if we decide to go these routes again in society and
Do
like
they
that.
just do it with medication now, more or less, or how does it?
Absolutely.
That was actually changing the, I don't know, they go up through the nose, I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't do
Eye
that.
socket.
They don't do your eye right here,
Yeah.
go up to the frontal lobe.
Yeah. That's nasty stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds pretty bad.
yeah. Yeah, so that's some of the ways that this works. Um. Yeah. Yeah, that's yesteryear's technology. Using these ideas in bad ways, technology has made it sharper. Be careful, technically even entire peoples from the planet. Quite literally.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you think if they did something to like the people, let's say, this is crazy. This has kind of gotten me kind of wound up, that lobotomy thing. If they did that to everybody, do you think the genetics of people would change? No, this is theory, this is crazy. Do you think that would change people? Do you think they'd change?
I think what you'd see is it would change people in a generation, but I think through mating behaviors. That's why I think you'd see it first.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
if I were to really get into it, what I would say is, as we learn more about these things and the tools that we have at our disposal, if I were to run the test run and see, how effective things are, like get to target certain populations, I'd believe something happens wild and see what it does.
Yeah,
Right? And that's it's like, we won't know that though until we go into war and then we'll find out, okay, they do have these tools. We lost.
one more thing.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about shock treatments?
A little bit, not as much, but,
Do they do them anymore?
not to the extent that they used to. They do have electric shock therapy still, but it's to a way lesser extent, and it's usually, I think, it can be used to help cure
What was
depression.
it for? Depression.
I think so, I don't.
That one could use
remember.
for schizophrenia.
My mom was kind of, she got shot.
Yeah, schizophrenia was a common war. They
I
used to
wondered
do.
if it was the same thing as a lobotomy, if it were just different.
It's different. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You're inducing enough trauma that body has to readjust. Is kind of what that is. Yeah.
I would think that would throw off everything in your brain, it's all electrical.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's some bad stuff.
It's made me think about shock treatment.
Well, it's one of those areas where you get to see just how dangerous this is. There's more danger here than anywhere else. Okay, nature versus nurture. Start getting into those theories, how it kind of works. There's a few different ways that people look at it. And to kind of get it, condense it down to its most simple is direct versus indirect. So if it's direct, excuse me, that trait itself will directly cause crime. If it's indirect, you have this trait. It's going to affect vulnerability, however you want to classify that, whatever facet of it you want to focus on, something you're interested in, and how it leads to crime. Right? And again, as we've already noted, just between nature and nurture itself, there is a definite feedback loop here. Right? So both of those things are going to be running at the same time. It's just which one you want to focus on. Right?
Okay, what's the definition of direct, right?
So direct, this is actually the direct relationship is what I'm talking about here. It affects it directly. This is an indirect relationship. It moves here first, then here.
So is one of them feel like a victim?
It could be something like, okay,
Or is-
maybe. It'll be something like, okay, we'll run the IQ for a second, okay? IQ for this person is one standard deviation lower than the average, so that's, technically mental retardation, right? It's not that will necessarily cause them to commit crime. It's now they can't hold down a job and they go and they take some food somewhere because they're hungry, right? Could be that. Could be any other things that can work in that way. Could be, between these different traits that you have, your predispositions or your, your aggressive qualities or whatever traits you want to focus in on. Maybe it's, they make you more vulnerable to crime because they remove some of your social contacts or something. There's all kinds of ways you can build this up. They'll do it a number of different ways. Right now, we're just focused on the nature of that relationship. They'll call that top one, was it individual vulnerability versus differential susceptibility, right? So this one would have to be individual because those traits are within you. There's variation between people, but you're the one with the traits. So anytime we're dealing with that, that's that individual trait. The, what do they get? Keyword, differential. Yep, differential susceptibility. What that is these traits are going to be different in each person, but how those traits work in relation to whatever factor that it is that we call vulnerability, it's kind of the same. That aggressive quality or whatever it is you're focused in on, it's going to have that same negative effect on your ability to enter the workforce or whatever it is. And that is what increases your vulnerability from crime. Okay. That's probably the first time we're doing on time. We're about out of time. So we hadn't made it quite to biological stuff where they start talking about biological trait or biochemical conditions and that kind of stuff. The big thing for this is, yes, you're dealing with trait theories. Really what you're dealing with is biopsychosocial stuff. Anyone who does this, the book will give you, this is what this theory is or these types of things. It's good to keep that in mind for the naming convention. Keep in mind, it's like, this is the kind of stuff that they're talking about. If you deal with any of these people directly, what they'll tell you is, I'm either a biosocial person, a biopsychosocial person, psychosocial person, that kind of, those are your big classifications. They won't go so far as to say, okay, I use this type of theory to, it'll be more of a sort of slow section. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into some of the
That's pretty broad. So it's all.
yeah, and so what it does is it's extremely broad. So we end up with the people who focus on very specific lines of it. I can have someone who's like, well, really what I focus in on is maybe it's the role of cortisol in this process, right? And that's all that they're really focused in. Or maybe it's the you know, I have a thing I can think of, to be honest with you. But it's stuff like that.
The role of cortisol.
Stress hormones. Right? It's like, as we start testing these things, okay?
Yeah.
It's like, can it do this? Can it do this? It can do both. And how many other things does it affect besides this one vulnerability we've identified or
That kind of ties into one of my favorite things, but it's an outside thing. It's like, because all the school shootings, it's like all these kids seem like they're on something.
yeah, and so that's
that.
yeah. And so that's
Like,
it's probably all of the above. Right, it's there's so much involved there. It's like, okay, how many different things have changed within a generation in terms of knowledge, in terms of how we go about spreading, in terms of our interactions with one another. It's like there's a lot to dig into. That's why methods is as important as it is, because that's the one that will tell you it's like, okay, now that we've got an idea for how the ideas people have been kicking around, that's the practical applied side of it. It's like now we've got the theories, right? We're dealing with
and methods is applying the theory to make it practical for use.
yeah. So if you want an overview of that, I'll give you a 2 minutes before technically out of time for methods lesson. Anytime you write a paper, you'll start with your introduction where you identify what that problem is. You'll have a literature review where you identify the different things that people have found related to those things. From there, you'll identify your methods for what you do. Then you'll find your results. And then after that's conclusions and recommendations, right? For that methodological process, like all of this part is going to be built into this, right? The lit review is going to be your theories and what other people have done. The methods is going to be what you specifically do. And it's going to be informed by what they did. As you build these things, this is that conceptualization process where you understand and identify the ideas you play with. This part right here is where you identify specifically what you're measuring, how you're measuring it. And then once you've done those two things, you got your theory and your methods, and they're overlapped together to bring it together. Then you're right here and you're done, right? From there, it's just, here's what the results were, here's what it means. Cool?
So that's our paper image.
Yeah, and on paper, we're not gonna do anything past here, right?
Okay.
So, so what I'm gonna do in this class with you all is, as we develop those ideas.
Research and the-
Yes, you'll get a firm idea for probably the
That's
whatever theory that interests you as best as it aligns with your topics. And so we'll have conversations about that.
That makes it easy.
And then, yes, then we build out that lit review.
Yeah, so
and-
I'm getting way off the weeds.
Yeah, and so it's like, don't think too much, just throw out a few ideas and then come and play. And that's what this is. It's literally. Another way of looking at it is it's a conversation you're joining in. As you do this, you identify, hey, that guy over there just said this. I see what he's talking about. Why don't we take a look over here? Hey, I found something new. And the next thing you know, someone else is citing you and you've joined that conversation.
Yeah.
Cool?
All right, yep.
All
That's
right.
cool. At least it gives me an idea of what you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. Have fun. I'll post out some more stuff related to the paper before next class and we'll set down next class. And
I appreciate that if you do that.
yeah,
That's what I do.
yeah. All right. Take care. You too. Bye.